Hey, I'm Penro776. New Heroes banner means new heroes. Who heroes? Well, we kind of expect Muspell because he was on the Tempest trial, but as for everyone else, they could be from anywhere. Holy shit, they made Yuri hot. Well, not made him hot. Yuri was already hot. Yuri was already exceedingly hot, but he continues to be just as hot. I mean, look at his arm. What the heck was that? He's agile. He's hot and he's agile. He's moving like a maniac. Let's calm ourselves down. Let's chill. Let's relax. Okay, so Yuri, obviously one of the top 3 hot boys in free houses, right? If you had to make a list of hot boys, imagine it now. It's Claude, it's Yuri, and it's a third slot who I have left open so you can put your favorite hot boy in there as a viewer. I don't want to impose upon you the entire top 3, you know? And he's hot and he's agile, and let's find out why he's agile, starting with his PRF. The Honorable Blade. It's a dagger. He's a dagger infantry unit. It enables Canto 2. That's already big. As an infantry, he has 2 movement naturally, right? So he can Canto for all of that again. He can hit you and then run right back to where he started. Accelerate special trigger, cooldown count -1. At start of turn, unit can move 1 extra space. I take back what I said. Arm had his gimmick for the better part of 1 week, tops, and now it is no longer Arm's gimmick. They're putting it on new units. You gotta share, buddy. There's more than one man with horse legs now. Yuri is getting in on that. Immense mobility, okay? Canto 2, free movement in return as well, and he's a dagger unit. Let's bear that in mind. Dagger units have, what's it called? Access to disarm trap, meaning that unlike other units who have to be really careful when testing traps, because they could, go off and waste turns, Yuri doesn't have to worry about that if he has disarm trap, obviously. It's freedom to move around without threats to your action economy from Aetherase traps. Also, at start of combat, if foe's HP is greater than or equal to 50%, grants attack speed +6 to unit during combat. Okay, that's not quite as impactful as every other line on this description, right? Canto huge, extra movement huge, slaying pretty damn big, +6 attack and speed, everyone has that nowadays, right? But it's still useful. It's still useful, right, to kill things with. And also he's a dagger, so of course there's dagger 7 on top of that. I'd also like to point out, this whole ass paragraph, more than half of it, is explaining what the shortened forms of some of these skills do. Why are they going to shorten skills to like Canto 2 or Dagger 7 if they're just going to include the entire explanation of what those things do in the text box anyway? I will never understand. Why invent like a glossary or something, okay? Hurry up already. He has a assist skill, Foul Play. Unit and target ally swap spaces. It's swap. Except there's something special about it. It's range free. You can do this from 3 spaces away. Okay, let's add all the effects up. Free movement, range free swap, Canto 2. The guy can go 8 spaces in 1 turn. Most maps in this game aren't even 8 spaces across. So add those 3 things together, plus him being a dagger, meaning he has access to disarm trap. He has the most mobility of anyone you're ever going to run into, possibly ever. Excluding, of course, like the insane mobility heroes like Legendary, won't name him just yet, but you know exactly who I'm talking about. He has the most, like, functional mobility. A close comparison I'd draw actually who would be Layla. He seems like he'd be able to use a similar role to Layla, right? Being able to swap with people. Layla's swap, I'd argue, is stronger because it triggers after combat and she gets Fire Sweep on her combat, so she gets basically a free combat out of it. Yuri doesn't have that in terms of action economy, but in exchange for that, in exchange for losing that one action, what he's gaining instead is flexibility. Because Layla is basically only useful for going in. Layla can't get you out. Yuri, with False Play and Kanto, he can target someone who's already gone in, foul play them out, which in turn, because it's a swap, foul plays himself in, but he then has Kanto to help get himself out as well. Layla can't do that. Also, he has free movement, which Layla doesn't have, and he has 1 extra range on his swap, which Layla doesn't have. But he doesn't get to attack. Okay. Oh, and one more bit of flexibility as well. Layla needs a support partner to swap. Yuri, he does not. Okay? As for the rest of his skills, C Dual Infantry 4. Not really a Yuri skill. Again, like, these dual skills, always great to have an expansion of dual skills, and Colorless Dual Infantry, no exception to that. But there's no real synergy with Yuri's kit. Sure, it gives you all stats and HP plus 5. Don't underestimate HP as a stat. It's really good. It's even better if there's damage reduction involved. But even without damage reduction, it's still really good. And of course, plus 2 to all other stats, but the real reason why you want a duel is to do arena stuff. And sure, you might be plus 10 Yuri, but you probably already have some plus 10 colorless unit that you want to put this on, right? So put it on them. As for Yuri, he's probably better off running some attack speed skill, or maybe Flashing Blade 4, or something, just anything along those lines, but honestly, this is still good. Other units who want it for not arena reasons, well, it's plus visible HP, so it's good for any unit who might have to worry about HP checks from, say, Bridal Fjorm. Or there's a few other HP checks out there as well, but Bridal Fjorm is the big one. And for other things, well, attack and speed, you're better off getting attack and speed visibly from Life and Death. Defense and res, you're better get off getting that visibly from Fortress Defense and res. But in terms of just pure overall stats, this is better than either of them. So, you know, it's a decent skill on anyone who can run it. There's nobody it's going to be a bad skill on, unless you do not want HP for some reason. You want a really low HP stat. But aside from those units, it's just good all around. It's decent. And then the C-slot Times Pulse. Obviously, he's got Glimmer as a special. Glimmer is nothing special. I mean, it is a special, but it's not special. You get my drift? But the important thing is he's got a slaying effect in his weapon, so any 2 cooldown special goes down to 1 cooldown. With Times Pulse, he always has a special. So, overall, what do I think? I think he's strong. I think he's strong as heck. And he's hot. Don't forget that, he's hot. But he's strong, but he's not going to be one of those absolutely McBusted units. Because he's the kind of strong that needs fort to use. He's not full on Edelgard. You can't just ram him face first into the enemy team and just go nonsense mode with him. You have to actually understand positioning to get the most out of his kit, and he is insanely strong at positioning, but you have to recognize the strength of positioning to use that, which previously with Layla, I think, used to be pretty much unstoppable, right? If you knew how to use her, there was nothing a well-built team could do against Layla. That's no longer the case because for whatever reason they decided to make save skills completely break Layla's effect, even though there's no reason they should do that. But before that, Layla could answer everything. With the right team, obviously. And Yuri seems like he's going to be able to do much of the same, of just safely getting in, getting out, in a way that you cannot do anything about. But again, you need fort to use that. Many people aren't going to have quite the grasp of positioning to actually make use of it. Still, I love the guy. Good job. Let's keep going. But thinking of it, since he's here...
Step aside.
This is an Ashen Wolves banner, an Abyss banner, right? Yeah! Yeah, it is. Here's Constance, as expected.
You have some need of me. I assure you I am busier than I may seem.
Oh, her voice acting still has all the attitude it's always had. I love it. And her kit. She is a red tome flyer. She is equipped with Agnia's Arrow. Grants speed +3. If unit initiates combat or is within 2 spaces of an ally, grants attack speed +6 to unit during combat, neutralizes effects that prevent units' follow-up attacks, neutralizes foes' bonuses to speed res, from skills like Fortify Rally, etc., on odd-numbered turns, and neutralizes units' penalties. Words, Penrost, you know what they mean, to attack speed on even-numbered turns. That is flavor! At its finest. Constance's thing, of course, is that depending on whether it's day or night, if it's light or dark, her whole personality changes, and her PRF reflects that in a way I really like. That's immensely flavorful. But also, it doesn't actually have a big swing in terms of the actual strength of its effect, because penalties and bonuses are about the same. Like, you can expect the foe to have +6, +7 bonuses. You can expect yourself to, if you're getting hit by penalties, they'll probably be +6, +7 as well, right? In fact, the fact that it applies one or the other gives you kind of freedom of choice if you're able to plan far enough ahead in terms of your turns to know when and who you're going to be fighting. This being said, red tome flyer with a null follow-up effect is an archetype that already exists, and already exists in the form of Duo Byleth, who has a very similar weapon, but a couple of advantages. One, Duo Byleth is a duo unit, has a duo skill. 2, Duo Byleth, I'm pretty sure, had a slaying effect in their weapon. Agnia's Arrow does not have that. Those two things combined are big, because the special is a big part of your damage, right? It just is. And slaying effect lets you use bigger specials. Simple as. Speed +3 is, like, nice, of course, but it is no slaying. It is not slaying. Instead, Agnia's Arrow is just giving attack speed +6, null follow-up, and then your choice of getting rid of relevant buffs or relevant penalties. Which is still good. It's still good, don't get me wrong, but Constance feels like she's coming out and she is already in an archetype where she's somewhat outperformed by a unit that already exists. Well, maybe her stats will say something different, but for the time being, that's how this reads to me. Harsh Command Plus is always valued. There's a lot of weird and wacky debuffs going around that you just want to get rid of, and Harsh Command Plus does that. That being said, it's still not a mobility skill, and mobility is king. Attack speed push 4 really says, well, she does attack speed. Makes sense. It is the, like, generic skill that they love to put on everyone these days, but it does that for a reason, because attack and speed are good stats, and you want them kind of all the time, and it just does that. It's good. Attack speed Far Trace is an interesting one. So far, the rest of her kit has said to me that she cares about attack, she cares about speed, she cares about lowering the opponent's resistance. Nowhere so far has any of this said that Constance wants to take even a single hit. I don't expect her to have a very tanky stat line from the way the rest of this kit has been put together, but this is attack speed Far Trace, which, let me remind you, traces work kind of like lulls. This one inflicts attack speed -3 on foe during combat. Is that attack -3 going to do anything? Only if Constance is already tanky enough to kind of survive. Which I don't think she is. I mean, I might be wrong, of course. She might be, like, surprisingly tough, but this seems like they're putting it in the pool just for the sake of putting it in the pool. I personally would have wanted more speed res far trace on her by the look of the rest of this kit. Because, I mean, yeah, looking down as well, she has speed res rain, whatever. Like, it's a whole kit that's focused around one thing, and then you've got this attack -3 on foe during combat that's just there. Why is it there? Well, anyway, I have no words. I guess we'll see. But yeah, she's an interesting unit, but I don't think she really has it compared to what's already out there.
Yeah!
3-9 times 2 against that Axe Flyer. I don't remember how much res those guys have, but yeah, look, 17 defense, 39 hit points. She's not living, guys. And is this the demo?
People keep their distance.
Are we?
It's easier that way.
Oh, if this is the demo, then I love this. Okay. Okay, I'll admit. This does not look much like a demo. I've seen demotes before, on most banners, in fact. Nearly every banner since they invented them. And I know enough about demotes to know that demotes normally don't have skills with the number 4 in the name. Like that one right there. Hapi is a blue tome cavalry unit, which is a very interesting spot to be in, because currently there are basically 2 good blue tome cavs. There is the Reinhardt, who is somehow relevant, despite the fact that he was in the game literally at launch and still doesn't have a refine. He's just using his regular old tome that he launched with. The fact that he's still good now, think about how good he was when he was originally added. And secondly, more recently, there's been added Selena, who fulfills a kind of different sort of blue tome cav role. Reinhardt is brave weapon, obviously. Brave weapon, just good. Selena is the Windsweep model with null follow-up. Hapi with her demonic tome. Well, to begin with, what do we see here? Effective against demon, effective against dragon and beast foes. That's good. Double effectiveness and beast effectiveness is starting to become quite relevant as well, with a certain fallen Edelgard who plenty of you are wanting to kick in the face of. Well, here's a tome that will perhaps do that. Accelerate special trigger cooldown, count -1. Slaying effect, alright, and at start of turn, if special cooldown count is at its maximum value, grants special cooldown count -1. Okay, and at start of combat, if unit's HP is greater than or equal to 25%, grants attack res plus 6 to the unit during combat. So here we have it. I think this is going to be a third strong blue tome archetype, because this is built in Time's Pulse. This is your setup for an instant special blue tome cav unit. And it looks like she's going for a attack res direction as well, because in that base slot, attack res catch. Okay, it's a catch skill. For instant specials, catch skills are actually going to be pretty great, because the whole goal of the instant special is for one shot. Right? You stack up a big damage and then you just bring it down on their head and they're dead. Right? That's what you do. So for that, the foe's HP is 100% condition is easy fulfillable right there. Penalty, well, penalty active on foe depends on the rest of your team, right? I don't see any way Hapi herself is putting penalties on people, but penalties are easy enough to make stick. Sometimes. If it was just a penalty condition, of course, I've said this before about catch skills, it remains true for this one. Just a penalty is hard to make stick, but the fact that it's this double condition means that you've got options. And attack res far trace. Great, especially on these cav ranged units. Being able to trace is just nice. Getting that Kanto. Because often, right, these kind of units are going to run out of range of dancers, which is bad. But you want your dancers to catch up, and with a short trace like this, you can just step back, get into dancer range, perhaps. That's good. The other thing that's interesting, because she's built with Glimmer, right? With Slaying and Times Pulsing the weapon, you might think, okay, one cooldown, 2 cooldown special, Times Pulse it down to 0, get it that way. But you've got options. Remember that you have options. 1, Pent is out there. 2, you've also got things like Legendary Hector now with his improved Ostia's Pulse. Grand Scratcher has never stopped existing. It's easy to forget Grand Scratcher exists, but it doesn't not exist. It does in fact exist. And also Quicken Pulse. So 1 cooldown is decent. With 2 cooldown from any 2 of these things, you can go up to a 3 cooldown special. She's got a high attack res focus. Maybe make that an iceberg. Big old iceberg, big old slap, big old effective damage. If you can combine 3 of these somehow, maybe, Grand Scratcher, her Times Pulse, put a Quicken Pulse on, then you're looking at AoEs, and that is big time plays, because AoEs are an answer to the metagame right now. A lot of units have supreme amounts of stat inflation in combat. They get like +5 to all stats, +10 to all stats, plus whatever to all their stats in combat. AoEs look at purely out of combat stats. If you can run an instant AoE special and you can protect that from Pulse Smoke, then you can kill most things. Legendary Lilina does this very well. I expect Hapi is going to be able to, if you can set that up the right way, do this very well as well. Since she's got Kanto, again I expect we're going to be able to see her stats in this replay.
Better you than me.
Oh, I love her voice as well. I love all the Ashen Wolves. I've said that already. But yeah, high attack, very high res, 39. Low defense and speed, that's okay. And oh yeah, Muspell! But what about BALTHUS? What happened to BALTHUS? Muspell, look at his art. That special art I really love.
Char the flesh. Show me the bones. Lay bare the truth.
Show me the bones. His voice lines I don't love quite so much. His art I do love though. But his voice lines sound like he's the kind of guy who owns an air fryer. I'm sorry I put that image in your head, but it's the truth. That's just what he sounds like. In fact, he is an air fryer, but he is a red cavalry dragon. He is armed with a flame lick breath. We've seen this already because he was in the Tempest Trials. Attack +3, start of combat if unit's HP is greater than or equal to 25%, grants attack speed, def res +5 during combat, and foe cannot recover HP during or after combat. In addition, if unit's HP is greater than or equal to 25% at start of combat, after combat if unit is attacked, inflicts deep wounds on target and foes within 2 spaces of target. If foe's range equals 2, calculates damage using the lower of foe's defense or res. What is this? It's +5 to all stats. It's the standard dragon adaptive damage effect. And it's Fatal Smoke. There's a lot of words there, but it is just the text of Fatal Smoke at greater than or equal to 25% HP. Don't get me wrong, Fatal Smoke, great skill. In fact, I'd say Fatal Smoke one of the most important skills out there, because so many things these days can just heal. Right? You've got Mystic Boost in the S slot. Anyone can run it. And that means that anyone who can survive any combat can potentially just, you run up back to them and they've got all their health back somehow. Don't know how, but it's back. It's as if you never hit them at all. And you've also got to consider things like staff units, things like healing towers especially. Fatal Smoke, great way around those. So this is a very useful kind of skill. Rally Up Attack. actually kind of nuts that Rally Up Attack is here, because if you look at who Rally Up Attack is on Ophelia. And then it's on 2 units who you're probably not rolling for. It's on Groom Pent, who, okay, you might want him because he has Pulse Smoke, but if you're taking Pulse Smoke, you can't really take for Rally Up. Plus, you've got to take for regular Rally Up because there's 3 levels of Pulse Smoke. And it's on, I think it's on Hot Springs Elise? Which, okay, maybe there are fans of Hot Springs Elise out there, I don't know. It was the most hated banner in Fire Emblem Heroes history, but maybe some people like her. But in any case, those are the only other sources of Rally Up Attack. In fact, Rally Up skills in general are supremely rare. Rally Up Speed is also only on a few units. Rally Up Res, the same is true for. Rally Up Defense does not exist! I'm not joking. These other 3 Rally Up skills are in the game. Rally Up Defense has never been seen. It's a cryptid. It does not exist. It's not real. It can't hurt you. And these are important because Rally Up skills have a very unique form of AI. Your regular rally skills will go based on a bunch of conditions, right? Rally Ups kind of care about those conditions, but instead of going for a specific target and having the rules regarding that, Rally Up skills will aim to buff as many targets as possible, so long as there is a valid target amongst those to actually want to rally. Which means that in your setups where you want to control the AI, Rally Ups act very differently to rallies under circumstances, which can be very useful. Because with a Rally Up, you can quite deliberately send someone to the front of your team, or to a specific spot on your team, in a way that you might not be able to with a regular rally. So the fact that they don't print them means that getting Rally Ups is actually really hard. I'm flat out of Aphelias for that reason, and it's even worse for people who want to build Ophelia because they can't. Or, I mean, well, they've got to pick, right? You pick merges or you pick Rally Ups. One or the other. There's no having it both ways. So that's a very nice fodder addition there. And it might be useful for him as well if you're using him in the rally trap, because he is a pretty much designed as an ARD unit, as you can tell from his A slot. ARD, Defense Res 4. The boy is going to be tanky as all hell whether you want him to be or not, because did someone say plus 11 defense and res? Yeah, it's another tier 4 ARD skill. Luckily they didn't power creep for tier 3 skills that much. They power creeped them by 1. But the tier 3 skills were still some of the strongest skills in the game for ARD, because you have 6 buildings on ARD, and these are active at greater than or equal to 5, meaning that they've got to take down not 1 but 2 of your meaningful buildings in order to actually take you down from that plus 11 zone. And even when you're out of the plus 11 zone, 4 buildings grants plus 7, which is still in the same range as the equivalent skill families that aren't ARD, right? So ARD skills have always been nuts. They're just limited to ARD in that way. They remain nuts. This one's nuts. In the B slot, Dragon Wall 3. Did I say he's tanky as hell? He has plus 5 res from his weapon, plus 11 res from his A slot, and now, if he has more res than you, he's getting 40% damage reduction. Good freaking job catching up to him in terms of res. So yeah, built tanky as hell, but then the C slot. Domain of Flame. Niffle had Domain of Ice, which was damage reduction. Domain of Flame grants attacks, defense plus 4, and the effect, and let's make sure we're reading this carefully because it's a fun one. The effect, if unit's attack is greater than foe's res during combat, Unit's first attack deals damage equal to 30% of unit's attack minus foe's res to allies within 2 spaces during combat. If unit is within 2 spaces of an ally, it grants the same effect to him, basically. On the first attack, you're getting an extra 30% damage, effectively. Except it's not quite that simple, because you're getting an extra 30% damage calculated against the foe's res. Which is important because a lot of foes have lower res than defense. Like, almost all units have that. There are a few exceptions here and there, but most units have defense as their main defensive stat, and res as like a slightly lower defensive stat. For reasons you can probably understand. Because that's just how things are. So it's 30%, because your attack minus their defensive stat is just how you calculate damage, right? So 30% of that is like 30% more damage-ish. The only thing it doesn't take into account is specials, of course. And you're getting attack defense +4 as well. The only thing that's kind of interesting about this is the 2-space condition, because the 2-space condition means, well, what does it mean? It means you've got to be near him, and he's got to be near you, and he's a counter unit, so he can very easily accidentally get out of range of you. Nifl's Domain of Ice was a lot less of an issue in that regard because of the damage reduction skill. It was most in action when you and your units were just sitting there in a clump, and of course you're all going to be within 2 spaces then, right? But here, when you're going out to attack, this might not be active. That being said, you know when it is still active? On the counter attack. When you're counter attacking, like in your big group, this is still going to take effect. There's no like phase lock on it. It occurs on your first attack in combat regardless. So that's great. And actually, like that means as well, you can use him in save balls for this, right? You can, because a lot of people when building tanks, they think about surviving. Because obviously that's what a tank does, right? They survive. But that's not the only thing a tank has to do, because if you let the enemy team live as well, they get danced, they get just all sorts of nonsense happens, they get to charge up specials, and you have a sad, bad day. Getting this much, 30% is quite a lot, by the way, getting this much extra damage out there is big, because killing things helps you survive. So all in all, I think Muspell is a very, very strong guy. Well, I mean, that should have been obvious, right? But, and also Cav Dragon, that's still a very unique role to fill. Come to think of it, Domain of Flame's going to be really strong in Pawns of Loki, huh? Well, in any case, yeah, I think this guy has a real spot on a lot of teams for just that extra kill utility and deep wounds as an effect, the fail smoke. Let's keep going, and yeah, look at that. Big, tanky bastard. And he's not even getting his +11 there from ARD attack, defense res even. Fafnir is mad as hell apparently, and ooh, there he is, that's BALTHUS. I saw the BALTHUS. Confirmation Hapi is not a demo, okay. They made BALTHUS an axe unit. BALTHUS, King of Grappling. You know what King of Grappling means? It means he does things with his hands, with his fists. You know, the guy who hits things with his fists? The guy whose, like, legendary unique weapon is a pair of big old gauntlets that he punches things with. The guy who's practically a shoo-in for the first gauntlet unit in Fire Emblem Heroes. Yeah, he's an axe unit. Okay, I'll admit, I'm not actually that surprised, because well, it's a bit of an odd time to bust out gauntlets, for one, and for the other thing, gauntlets as a new unit, I think they need a bit more of a push in mainline Fire Emblem first, before they really become a thing. Because, I mean, you look at beast units, they're in a bunch of games. You look at daggers, they're in effectively a bunch of games, even if they're not really. Daggers is kind of encompassing a bunch of weapon types, but it does its job, more or less. Gauntlets are still in, like, a couple games tops, and even then, there's only like 2 or 3 units who are really defined by their uses of brawling. BALTHUS obviously one, Raphael, Casper, but aside from that, most of the other characters who do that would be alts of characters that are already in game, so there's not really a huge priority on adding brawling to the game just to get them in. That being said, I still think it's important that it gets in at some point because we need like colourless melee for Pawns of Loki, otherwise your sword, lance, and axe units are going to be capped at +6 for colour diversity, and that hurts your scoring, which is a shame because I really want to use Arden, because I love Arden. He's a great guy. Mr. Crabman himself. But in any case, yeah, to make that push where brawling is really, like, important to put in the game, I think there needs to be a new Fire Emblem game that has a decent roster of brawlers to add to the brawlers who are already in Free Houses and other titles. That's my 2 cents anyway. As for the units on this banner, well, I'm a bit short of orbs right now, so I personally am not going to be rolling. But if you are, let me know, and I'm definitely hoping, because there's a Forging Bonds, right, that I'm going to be getting something fun from my free summons. Thank you all for watching, as usual, and I will see you all next time. Ta-ra!